How many classes of shares should we have? This is a very important question. It's a good question. It doesn't come up that often because most people just assume that there's only going to be two. And two is the basic deal that most attorneys write. They write a two-class deal, which is fine, works a lot of times, but I guarantee you're going to grow out of this deal as you stay in this business just a little while longer. So for example, here are the two classes. The first class are the investors who put in cash. That's what they get. They get what we call A shares. And then what frequently is called B shares are the promoter shares. And the promoter shares come with special rights. They get special rights, special distributions. They get special voting rights. They get fees. There might be some other things that happen along the way. So you have the A shares, and let's say you have the B shares, which are the promoter shares. And the investors, all these things are spelled out in the operating agreement, exactly how it works, and it's all laid out. And for example, it will say that this is how much preferred return the investors get. This is what happens on dissolution. This is how distributions are made. All the rules are very clearly laid out for each class of shares. And all people inside the same class have to be treated the same. So if you have two people that are both A shareholders, and they both have to be treated the same. When you distribute money, you have to give them both a pro rata amount. You can't give one first and the other one. You have to treat everybody fairly and evenly. But when you stop and think about it, cash is not the only thing that an investor could contribute into a deal. And that's the reason that we use a four-class structure. We still get the promoter shares. We call those D shares. But the investors can get A, B, or C because there's different ways that they can put in resources into the deal. The A shares are cash. So cash investors, they put their money in just like that. The B shares, though, are very interesting. Those are assets other than cash. So what's an asset other than cash? Well, it might be an apartment building. It might be a yacht. It could be anything. So investors have the ability to put assets into the fund that are non-cash related, but still have equity and value to the fund. Now, I wouldn't take a yacht into a fund unless you're in that business, but it's entirely possible that somebody could have an apartment building that they want to contribute to the fund because they want to diversify. They're all located in one part of the country and your fund is maybe more diversified, or there's just some other reason that they want to do it. And a very common reason, by the way, is, and you can go to an estate attorney and talk to them about this, is that grandma and grandpa have had their building for many, many years. They're making a lot of money and they've got three kids and the three kids all hate each other. And they got grandchildren that all hate each other, and everybody's all in a huff. And the grandparents just simply don't want to squander the building away. They want the kids to get the cash flow because they're not responsible people that are going to be able to make a good living or whatever the problem is. They want to make sure they get the cash flow, but they feel like if they give them the building, that the grandchildren and the children are just going to liquidate the building and then they'll run out of money and all the grandparents' hard work for all their life goes down the drain. So what you might do is grandma and grandpa might contribute the building into your fund, and then you distribute the shares across the many heirs of that are there. And so we actually have a program. We call it Shares for Heirs. And that's exactly what it is that grandma and grandpa can spread that out. So the fund then would own that building and hold it for a long time. Plus they would get the diversification from all the other assets that our fund owns or whatever fund you put it into. And they get that and they spread that out across the many different things, and they're getting a cash flow for many years. Ultimately, they ultimately do get the cash when you liquidate the fund. If you ever liquidate the fund in the future, they would eventually get the cash and you keep the building and you can sell it or do whatever you want. But that's a great example of B shares. Those are assets other than cash. And finally, we have a class called C shares. And the C shares, those are compensation shares. These are special shares for vendors. So for example, let's say you need to hire an architect to do some drawing and it's 50 grand. It's not that the fund doesn't have the money, but you might want to put the vendor on the same side of the table as everybody else in the fund. So you say, look, we're going to give you 25,000 in cash. We're going to give you 25,000 in C shares. And over time, they get preferred return on those C shares. They get a capital balance over time in the C shares. And eventually they get their 25,000 back when everybody else gets their money too. When there's liquidation or when there's distributions, they'll get some of that money. So there's different ways that deals can be done. And I just want you to think about this. When large companies like Google buy other companies, and we hear about this in the Wall Street Journal all the time, they don't actually write a check. They go to the stock book and they just write a share of stock. They say, here's 10,000 shares of stock, and they give it to them. And so those B shares are sort of a way that happens. Very powerful. If that's something that could work for you, consider making that happen. So in the meantime, this is a great business. Go out and stake your claim.